verses 16 through 19. You will find the text on the back of the bulletin. Thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters, who brings out chariot and horse, army and warrior. They lie down. They cannot rise. They are extinguished, quenched like a wick. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. A New Testament reading from John, chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, 17 through 27, and 38 through 44. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill, so the sisters sent a message to Jesus. Lord, he whom you love is ill. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him, Jesus said to her. Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone, Martha. The sister of the dead man said to him, Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took the stone away, and Jesus looked upwards and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet unbound, bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
This is a service of discernment today. We thank Tom for sharing with us about the survey and the importance of everyone participating in it. We thank the children for getting us going in such a great way, talking about new things God will do and can do among us. There is a time as well, as you heard in announcements, in which you will respond, writing your thoughts, your reflections, and then giving that to the usher after the service. I saw a number of people slipping in after the announcement, so if you do not have a bulletin or you do not have a pencil, raise your hand and let the usher know, and the usher will share with you. We want everyone, members, friends of the church, even guests of the church, to participate in this important process. Now, a question. If you were in the middle of the desert and someone came up to you and said, if you just wait right here, somebody's going to come and bring a new thing. A new thing is going to happen. Pretty soon, water, a river of water is going to come flowing down across this dry land right through the middle of this desert. Would you believe that? My husband asked that question of the children one Sunday in the time for children in his church. I would believe it, one of the little boys said. I would too, another little boy said. Me too, the other children chimed in. You would believe it? Why would you believe it? Bill asked. Because God would do it. God would do it, Bill said. And so we believe, yes, except, the little boy said, if you're a child, you would believe it. But if you're a grown-up, you might not believe. And besides, he said, I wouldn't be in the middle of the desert. Well, what if you were, Bill said. I wouldn't be, he argued back. But what if you were, Bill said, trying to tell his story. And what if you'd been there for a long time? And what if you were a long way from your home and you didn't know how you were going to get home? And somebody came and said, if you just wait right here, God's going to make a way for you to go home. God's going to make a way through this wilderness, this desert. And God's going to keep you safe from the animals, and God's going to give you water. So much water that there'll even be flowers blooming out in the desert. I would believe it, the little boy said. I would too, the other little boy said. Me too, the other children chimed in. Well, the children of Israel had been in Babylon a long time, Bill continued with his story. And they were discouraged. It was a long way to their home with a wilderness in between. But then a new ruler, a Persian ruler named Cyrus, took over Babylon. And a prophet named Isaiah came to the people and said, God's going to send you home. And God's going to get you all the way there through the wilderness with everything you need. And some of the people believed, and some of the people did not believe. I would believe, the little boy said. I would too, the other little boy said. And I would too, all the children chimed in. Well, good, my husband said, because it really did happen. And the people had water? Yes, he said, the people had water. And the people got to go home? Yes, they got to go home. And they were happy? They were very happy. And do you know what else Bill said? God's going to do a new thing with us. Watch and wait. God's going to do something new here. Do you believe it? I believe it, the little boy said. I believe it, the other little boy said. I believe it, all the children chimed in. I'm starting my 12th week here as the interim pastor. And in the 11 weeks so far, we have had 4 memorial services for members. And many of you have attended other services as well. Services for loved ones, for your family members, for your friends. We've also said goodbye to others who are moving away for various reasons to various places. But with that, we've also said hello. Hello to many. People moving into this community. People coming to this church. People getting involved at this church. People joining this church. And yet, in the ebb and the flow of life, we tend to focus more on the losses than the gains. We tend to look back at the way things used to be, rather than seeing the evidences of resurrection, the budding of new life, the shoots of new life that are springing up. We can't always see that. And we have a difficult time believing that God is able to do a new thing now, in this day. The prophet Isaiah was talking to people who had had a lot of loss. And they had also lost the ability to believe that God was with them and that they were God's people. They only had hindsight vision. They could only look back at the way things used to be. They could not believe that God was still working with them, working through them. A pastor, a young pastor, took a call to a church. And after she got there, she found all kinds of people wanting to come and talk with her, to share with her. And they came one after another, sharing the history of the church, the great heritage of the church. And they also shared advice. Now, we need to keep things this way. They need to stay this way. If you just keep things the way they've been, then we will be okay and you will be fine. Finally, after thanking yet another parishioner who came and shared a history lesson, and then a litany of the way we do things here, she said, "You know, I have seen and I have heard testimonies of God's great blessings here, God's faithfulness to you and the faithfulness of the people in the history of this church. But let me ask you, what new and exciting things do you see God doing now? What new and exciting things do you see God doing us together in our future here?" And suddenly, there was no talking. Everyone was silent. For the people could not imagine a future any different from their past. That is our challenge. That is the challenge of the Mission Study Committee, those 16 people who are leading us this year in to discern what new and exciting things, building on the great heritage of faith that is here, 220 years of God's faithfulness here. Building on that for new and exciting things to be Christ's church now, in this day and in the future and beyond. Isaiah the prophet cut to the heart of the matter. He said to those discouraged people, if God can make a way through the sea, talking about their ancestors that were led out of slavery, out of bondage from Egypt, if God can make a way through the sea, God can make a way for you through the wilderness. I am hearing wonderful stories here about God's blessings in this church. I am hearing about how the people here have been faithful through all kinds of times, 220 years of plenty and years of want. How people dreamed and they worked to build this great physical plant. And then how it has been dedicated to being a mission outpost in this city, in this community. Those before made deposits from which we get to make withdrawals. Now it's time to make deposits for the future, for the next generations. And if God can take sweat and prayers and giving and dreams and build these buildings, then God can certainly build a future for this church in this day, in this time, in this city. You heard the account of our gospel lesson, how Jesus' good friend Lazarus has died. And Martha and Mary, sisters of Jesus, send word to Jesus saying, come quick, help, your friend Lazarus has died. But the account in John tells us that Jesus does not come immediately, most likely because he realizes that when he comes to Bethany, only 2 miles out of Jerusalem, not only is he coming to face the death of his good friend, he's coming to face his own death. When Jesus does arrive to Bethany, Martha says, "You're too late." But Jesus goes to the tomb, and he calls to the tomb a command to his friend, "Lazarus, come forth." It is the command that we each need to hear today on this Sunday in Lent. Each of us individually and this church as a congregation, come forth. Come forth. Be resurrected. Be risen to new life, to life beyond. Lazarus does come forth. He comes forth from the tomb. And then Jesus gives a command to the people who are there that's just as powerful as the command he has given to his friend Lazarus to bring him back from the dead. He turns to the people at the tomb and he says, "Unbind him and let him go." And suddenly, the community is partnered with Jesus. The community is brought in to assist in the resurrection process. All around us, there are people yearning to live resurrection lives. Most of them know about new life brought through Christ. They've heard the message. Many have reached out to receive it. And yet they're walking around in their burial clothes. Like Lazarus, they're wearing the coverings of death. Like Lazarus, they're bound up in old bondages, old ways, old sins. And Jesus calls us, the community, to help unbind them. Jesus calls us to complete the process, the act of resurrection. I am the resurrection and the life, Jesus says to Martha as she's grieving the loss of her brother. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe that, Martha? Yes, Lord, she says. I believe it. I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. Later, Jesus would call that community his friends, and he would breathe on them, into them, his very spirit, so that they might live out of love as he lived. I'm about to do a new thing with you. Can you see it? Look. Look around. Watch. Can you believe it? Believe it. That is our invitation today, to look around and see the new things that God is calling us to do, to look around and see the evidences of resurrection. This time in the church, I'm calling a comma time, this interim time. But we're not putting a period in this church. No, it's just a comma. So it is our task together to discern where God is leading you next. I invite the choir to sing, and I invite you to please share your thoughts. There are no right or wrong answers. These do not have to be written in beautiful sentences. Just your ideas, your thoughts that the Spirit is sharing with you as the answer to these questions.